On AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. And so, returning our attention to the Trump and Putin summit, both the pre and post. The pre and post. I think there's like three categories of content to pour over when it comes to this weekend: the optics, the topics, and the results. But before we even get to that, the pre-summit expectations. Brett Baer was on Air Force One with President Trump prior to his greeting and sitting down with Putin. And he was in the room, apparently, so he said, with when Trump had a call with Belarus President Lukashenko, who is a Putin stooge. So got to factor that in. But this is what Putin stooge Lukashenko had to say to Trump about Putin in advance of their sit-down.
Essentially, he said that Lukashenko, told him that he believes that Putin is ready to deal and that this is going to be a positive thing. Now, remember, the leader of Belarus is a close ally of the Russian president, and so it was informative. You also got some hostages released who were jailed inside Belarus, the president did. So he came off that call optimistic about where things stood.
Although, I mean, again, Lukashenko is probably, he's running interference for Putin. So you're trying to get in the mind that I want a deal and here's the deal, and maybe not. Maybe Putin is just buying time as he continues the war. No ceasefire was agreed to. No severe consequences have followed to date. Rubio explained why. But here was Trump at the post sit-down press conference talking about the prospect of deal.
So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And when he sat down with Hannity, he added a little bit more texture to the sit down. I'm talking about Trump sitting down with Hannity.
I mean, we were together almost 3 hours, and it was very extensive, and we agreed on a lot of points. I mean, a lot of points we're agreed on. But there's not that much. There's, one or two pretty significant items, but I think they can be reached. Now it's really up to President Zelensky to get it done. And I would also say the European nations, they have to get involved a little bit. But it's up to President Zelensky. I think we are, and if they'd like, I'll be at that next meeting. They're going to set up a meeting now between President Zelensky and President Putin. And myself, I guess, I didn't ask you about it. Not that I want to be there, but I want to make sure it gets done. And we have a pretty good chance of getting it done.
And, of course, the D.C. press corps immediately jumped on the summit as a failure. The optics were bad. He was too friendly with Putin. He smiled when he shook his hand. I mean, there are pictures circulating online of Obama and Hillary Clinton doing the same thing. That's what you do when you greet a head of state, even if it's a dictator. You're not dealing with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir the world over. Again, the reality of the situation. If you're trying to achieve something important that is difficult, like the killing being stopped in Eastern Europe, when somebody is not averse to killing his way into his territorial desires. I'm talking about Putin, of course. But the D.C. press corps, like the people that rely on them, just want to traffic in beautiful lies. They don't want to deal with difficult realities and very tough binary choices that have to be made if you want to try to advance the flag for peace. That's just the reality of it. And this is what Marco Rubio tried to explain to Martha Raddatz when The criticism came fast and furious. He said he wanted a ceasefire. He said there would be severe consequences if there wasn't a ceasefire. No ceasefire, no severe consequences. That combined with the optics make this an embarrassing failure for the president.
Critics of President Trump will say the pomp and circumstance, the red carpet, the warm handshake, that President Trump simply lost that Putin gained there just by being on the world stage and walking down a red carpet with the president. Your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, critics of President Trump are always going to find something to criticize. You don't even pay attention to it anymore. But I will tell you this, Putin is already on the world stage. He's already on the world stage. The guy's conducting a full-scale war in Ukraine. He's already on the world stage. He has the world's largest tactical nuclear arsenal in the world and the second largest strategic nuclear arsenal in the world. He's already on the world stage. When I hear people say that, oh, it elevates him, well, all we do is talk about Putin all the time. All the media's done is talk about Putin all the time for the last 4 or 5 years. That doesn't mean he's right about the war. That doesn't mean he's justified about the war. Put all that aside. It means you're not going to have a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. You're not going to end a war between Russia and Ukraine without dealing with Putin. That's just common sense. I shouldn't even have to say it. So people can say whatever they want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to get the Russian side to agree to things that they don't want to agree to if we're going to have peace. If not, there'll just be a war. They'll keep killing each other. And life will go on in America and in the rest of the world, but not for Ukraine. So the president has invested a lot of time in trying to bring an end to this war. He deserves credit for doing that. He gets criticism for doing that. He could have just let this war go on. The president could have just said, this is Biden's war. It started under him. We'll do what we can for Ukraine, but we're going to focus on other things. He could have easily said that. But he's the only leader in the world that can get Putin to a meeting to talk about serious things.
But I don't want to deal with Putin, and I'm going to hold my breath until Putin retreats. For more on this, Stephen Bucci joins us, Weekly Conversation. Stephen served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back.
Your takeaways from this weekend sit-down between Trump and Putin.
Well, I'll start with a comment on Martha Raditz's comments. Last time I checked, Martha has never negotiated an international deal with anyone. And gee, President Trump's had quite a few successful ones that he's done. He kind of knows how to negotiate. You may not like him, but that doesn't change that he can do what he's trying to do. Now, okay, he didn't have instantaneous success over the weekend. It's a process. So I think Rubio was exceedingly polite to her, not to tell her, use the old Saturday Night Live and say, Martha, you ignorant slut.
Yeah, wow. That would have been something.
It's a completely vacuous questioning that she was trying to do. So with that, I wish they had gotten to an agreement and Putin had agreed to withdraw completely and all the killing stopped. I don't think anybody with any brains thought that was going to happen this weekend. But now we're going to have a bilateral negotiation between the Russians and the Ukrainians with some of the other European folks there. There'll definitely be Americans there, at least as observers, if not participants. We're making progress. I'm not saying that's going to be a guarantee that we're going to get what all of us want, which is peace in Ukraine, restoration of some degree of Ukrainian sovereignty over its territory. But it's better than, Putin walking away, shooting President Trump the bird and heading back to Moscow. That didn't happen. The door's open. Let's see where we can get.
Yeah, and the understanding of what the conversations were, and this, I guess, is sort of reporting, bank shot reporting on Trump's briefing of European leaders that then back channel to members of the D.C. press corps. So, the 5 regions in dispute, these are in eastern Ukraine. None of this is a surprise, where Putin controls some or most of the territory. And the deal was basically, as reported, let's just say for the sake of argument, this is a potential deal. He gets Donbass, the administrative lines, not just the lines where he has current control, because you want these regions to be. He wants these regions to be completely within the purview of Russian control, and he'll concede on not NATO membership, of course, for Ukraine, but he'll concede on sort of quasi de facto Article 5 guarantees language from the United States that the United States will consider an attack on Ukraine an attack on America and America's allies, and so there'll be a military response. So he wants Donbass. He'll stop there, administrative lines. He's okay with the security guarantee from the United States, language like that, so long as there's not formal NATO membership, and he won't go further than Donbass into Ukraine or other countries. If those broad outlines, as sort of telegraphed by Steve Witkoff and others, are in fact accurate, is that a deal that America should live with?
I personally, I don't like him getting more of the Donbass because the areas that he doesn't control right now, he has not been able to get control over really since 2020 or 2012, let alone the 2022 invasion. He has failed, and his military has failed to be able to gain control of it. There are reports about, quick Russian advances is a bunch of nonsense. There's lots of independent sources out there that are saying, Ukraine doesn't have the ability to push the Russians back, but the Russians have shown an inability to push the Ukrainians out of the rest of the Donbass area. And Putin's trying to make up for his military failures by getting that kind of deal. I think that he can be pushed a little more than that. He's at least shown his kimono a little bit open, that he recognizes he's not going to get more and more of Ukraine. He wants this little extra bit, but I think the Ukrainians can get in there in this negotiation with the Europeans supporting them, and maybe put the palm up to Putin and see him back off, because I think he's starting to admit his military cannot do what he is trying to do. So now he's trying to get it through negotiations.
But is there any scenario? One of the other things that's going on is that all of these Joe Obama administration intel officials and diplomats are moving the goalposts on Trump. Victory to Hillary Clinton. I'll nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize myself if he gets full Russian withdrawal. If Ukraine retains all their territory and then he gets gradual full Russian withdrawal from Ukraine, then I'll nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, as you said, that is completely unrealistic. It would seem. Even I think Zelensky in a private moment would probably say that's unrealistic, but this is part of what they're doing.
Yeah, the press corps, the Obama Biden holdover hangers-on comments, they failed completely in this. And now they have the chutzpah to carp at Trump because he hasn't fixed it in the first couple of months of his administration. And when they screwed it up for years, we see this kind of stuff all the time. Trump is making progress. I think anybody expects, the Ukraine to get back, the Crimea and all of the Donbass, all that. I mean, if anybody believes that, that's la la land. I don't think that's happening. Is it unfortunate? Yes. Did he steal that land? Yes. But unless somebody's willing to roll a whole bunch of good guy tanks in that direction, that's not going to change. And I don't see that happening with our cooperation or anybody else's. So there's going to have to be some settling for less than 100% of desires on both sides. It's just, where do you draw that line? How hard can you negotiate to get what you want? And we're in that process now. And this next meeting will be an important one, because now you'll finally have all of the participants there making the arguments and see where it goes.
The comments on the optics Well, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Of course, here's a dizzying intellect, former NSA Susan Rice, calling this a big win for Putin. What happened this weekend?
It was, in short, Jen, a big victory for Vladimir Putin. He walked off his plane onto a red carpet to a clapping Donald Trump and a flyover of American military aircraft, an extremely warm reception, and then they get into the President of the United States limousine, one-on-one with no staff and no interpreters. And Putin apparently speaks good enough English to carry on a conversation. I hope, Jen, that he did not drop a bug in the backseat of the president's limousine as a former KGB chief, because having Putin in that limousine is really quite an extraordinary gesture. And then he lets Putin speak first at the press conference. But the big picture is that this is the end, from Putin's perspective, of his international isolation. He's welcome onto American soil for the first time in almost 2 decades outside of the UN. And he gets a warm welcome from Trump and gave nothing in return. Stuck to his hardline positions about Ukraine. And he walks away with no sanctions against him, evading sanctions for the 4th time. He walks away with no ceasefire, vague discussion about an agreement that nobody understands. And he's in a stronger position than when he arrived. And Trump, frankly, it's not clear what he got, except some, backhanded BS about how a war wouldn't have happened if Trump had been president, which is something Trump loves to say. And that literally might be the only thing Trump got out of this whole charade.
Better sweep the beast to make sure that Putin didn't wire it up there, Steve.
I mean, come on. This woman, supposedly a professional, State Department, Foreign Service officer, and she talks nonsense that's barely a tick above, Kamala Harris kind of talk. Look, thank you for the reminder, Ambassador Rice, but yes, the Secret Service knows they have the beast every time anybody not on the president's immediate circle goes in there. Gee, what a wonderful idea. Nobody else would have thought of that.
And not to mention, why does he need to bug it? I thought Trump was Putin's guy in D.C., so he's not?
Exactly. And then the other stuff, come on. What is he supposed to do when Putin arrives? Sit there, in a kung fu ready stance, ready to whack him when he comes off the plane? This was normal diplomatic protocol for a head of state, even a head of state you don't like. You go into a negotiation by, standing there with your back to the guy and your arms folded like, well, I know you're here to talk to me, but I'm not going to look you in the eye because you're a bad guy. I mean, what are we on the ground? What is wrong with the people that worked for Obama and Biden? This, just because they don't know how to do negotiations and diplomacy, but then they think they should criticize everybody else. All of that is complete hogwash, or BS, as she put it. She should. Why do people keep talking to her?
This is for obvious reasons. MSNBC, consider the source. But I mean, and by the way, I also thought the B-2 bomber flyover, I didn't take that as honoring Putin. I took that as sort of a show of force.
I agree with you 100%. I thought the same thing. Gee, the B-2's going over. Didn't we just send a big message with B-2s, both to Iran directly and by sending the B-2s to Okinawa to China indirectly? Well, now Putin just got his personal warning as well.
Yeah.
So
Trump might as well have said in the beast, like, hey, that's the one that I used to knock out the Iranian nuclear facilities. Yeah. Your buddies in Tehran.
Knowing Trump, I have a feeling he probably said something like that to him.
So if this thing doesn't move forward, if Putin is not, sort of open-minded and oriented towards a deal as suggested, if it turns out not to be the case in the short term, then does Trump necessarily need to move with secondary sanctions, the much ballyhooed secondary sanctions?
If there is no movement, if Putin really acts like, I don't have to do anything, I rolled you guys, I'm going to stay exactly where I am, which Putin, he could do that. If it happens, then the sanctions should be put on immediately, both on Russia and anybody who's been doing business, including the Chinese, by the way. If there's some movement, but not enough to satisfy us, you could say, you know what, we're going to delay the sanctions one more time. We need something at this table that's reasonable and proper, and then we'll go forward. But if there's no movement, I think they should go on immediately.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show. Take care.
Take care. And Stephen joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. You probably know I help business owners fight back against the IRS, but did you know I can help with state taxes too? Right now, Illinois is about to open a rare tax amnesty program. For a short window